like to say thank you to everyone for being here. Call the meeting to order. This is a special call meeting for the purpose of a public hearing for the budget. We are replacing our normal work session time to go over and do a public hearing to present the 2023 draft of the budget. Just kind of give everybody an idea of the picture of time frame. Then we will present this as the first draft tonight. We will do another during our next meeting on December the 1st. We will present a second public hearing just in case there are other questions or anything that comes up. And then at our December 15th meeting, we will vote to adopt the budget for 2023. So that way we will have two opportunities to go through. Tonight, the full board is being provided a copy and draft of the full line item budget so that they can review. And then when we come back for the next public hearing, they will have an opportunity to look through that as well as the public. Following tonight's meeting, a copy of the full line item budget will be available in the clerk's office for anybody that wants to come and inspect and review. We don't distribute them because it is a draft, and if you get copies all over the place and then something's changed, then we've got 20 different copies of different things all over. So that's why we leave it in the office for people to come and review and inspect and take a look at, but we're not sending out copies all over the world. Tonight, or this afternoon, we'll go through, we have a brief presentation, PowerPoint presentation to kind of give highlights and to go over the big line items to show the total budgets and the budgets for the different categories. So we'll go through that. Like I said, it's the first time that the full draft of the final draft of the budget's been provided to the board for them to review over the next 2 weeks as well. So that's kind of just to give a reiteration explanation of what the purpose is tonight. Thank you all for me. I'm going to go through this just to kind of walk everybody through. You should be able to see on your slides in the background, I hope, if you can see. First is kind of showing the duties of the budget officer out of Pickens County Ordinance, Section 115. It states that the chairperson shall submit annually to the Board of Commissioners proposed budget governing expenditures of all county funds, including capital outlay and public works projects for the following fiscal year. So just to kind of give you the reason why I'm here and why we're doing this. Budget officer means that local government official is charged with budget preparation and administration for local government. So we'll go through and just to try to take a look at the 2023 budget highlights, just in the top category. One highlight is it's a full property tax rollback was part of the revenue. That's the legal property tax reduction. It's a balanced budget with no use of general fund balances. We were able to prepare a budget with that. Most departments are operating budgets stayed the same or decreased. Net salaries and allocable expenses, which we'll go through and try to explain those as well. Market salary adjustment equal to $3.50 hourly raise for each public safety employee. This was a commitment that the board made as the digest was being presented a couple months ago. A uniform cost of living adjustment for all non-public safety employees of 5% is factored into the budget we're presenting. Increased central contingency funds from $715,000 to $1.693. One of the things that we were trying to make sure to be very cautious with as we prepared the budget for 2023 is to have the funds available for some of the different things, especially with health insurance and other areas that we can't always budget for changes that we don't know if they're going to come. We wanted to have that number high to where we were safe, but we also wanted to have that number high so that in the event that we're able to manage this and not have to use it, the meeting we had 2 weeks ago where we announced how much had to be moved out of general fund to account for accounting irregularities, we have an opportunity to make up for a chunk of that as well to get our general fund balance. So we're trying to use this as an opportunity to be very fiscally responsible, very safe, being prepared for if we have things that happen, but if we don't, then we have an area that we can try to help to bolster that back up. There are 2 new positions in the budget for this year, but no additional headcount. They came from attrition from other positions that are not here anymore and they've been replaced. So there's 2 new positions, but no additional headcount within the Board of Commissioners span of control. And as you'll see when we go through the budget, there are a lot of other elected officials that are a part of our budget that we don't have direct span of control. We set their budget and they manage it from within that. So if they have headcount changes, that's headcount changes that they manage. But within our span of control, there were no additional. Modified fund structure to be compliant with state mandates, and we'll go through and explain that. That deals with separating a fund item out, and it'll be on the next couple of slides as we go through there. One big thing that we are incorporating into the budget for this year is a retirement plan change. Adding an unreduced early retirement for a rule of 80, minimum age of 55 for those that are under the old plan versus 65 that it currently is now. The current retirement plan requires that you reach 65 or you're penalized for anything short of that. By going with the rule of 80 for anybody that's currently a member of what's referred to within the county as the old retirement plan, but it's the defined benefit plan versus the defined contribution plan. So employees prior to 2016. I'm looking at Paula to make sure that 16 was correct. Yeah, because she nodded. So employees prior to 2016 were under a different retirement plan. That was this will affect those as well. This item's not been voted on by the board yet. It'll be presented at the time the same meeting when the budget approval takes place. But we did include it to show that we do have a way to fund the difference that would be there, and so it's included as well. Fund structures through 2022. So this is where we are today and what's been up until this fund. You have a general fund, which is kind of our big bank account that houses most everything. You have two enterprise funds, which is for water and the airport, and a SPLOST fund. That's all the funds that are collected for SPLOST. Currently, the E911, the emergency 911, has been within the general fund up until this point. Once the auditors reviewed, they stated that is to be a separate fund. That does not need to be maintained within your general fund. So we are creating the new structure moving forward. We'll have our general fund the same, two enterprise funds, water and airport, SPLOST. We're also removing the E911 from the general fund and creating its own separate fund. And you'll see as we go through the budget to see where the county still has to supplement some of the things, but some of the funds that the E911 receives from your phone bill payments are supposed to go into a direct fund. And we're also creating a judicial grants fund to help separate that out. There's a tremendous number of judicial grants and grant budgets that are managed through our funding. So we're taking that out of the general fund and putting it into its own separate fund so that it's managed more clearly. That's at the advice of the auditors looking through and to be compliant with state law as well. So that'll be in what we're going to look at. One reason I kind of point that out early on is it does make the numbers look a little bit different when we look at public safety. In just a couple moments, you're going to see the number. E911 has now been moved, and so it's now in a different category. So that'll help to make sense of that just a little bit. The 2023 proposed balanced budget, your revenue and expenditure line items match up at $32,856,476. In our water fund, the water and expenditures match at $3.228577. Airport, total budget is $983,830. The E911 that I talked about, that fund being moved over to its own fund, the budget is at $1.455244. Judicial grants that are managed through our office, $4,543,678. And then our SPLOST, the overall 6-year SPLOST of the 2020 SPLOST, county portion is $30,266,000. Now that's not all for this year. That's something that's over the course of the entire 6-year SPLOST as well. Looking at that kind of as we look through to where you can see the structure where all the funds are on one sheet. This gives you a picture of all funds that are managed and balanced as well. So like I said before, the general fund revenue and expenses is at $32,856,476. The next slide is going to kind of show that and how that revenue breaks down. You can see real property taxes in 2023 is at $13,300,000 for the proposed budget for 2023. That's in comparison to last year, which was at $11,245,900 $395. Biggest proponent of that, as the digest was presented, was real growth that occurred in the county over the last year. There was a lot that was built in the last year. You can kind of see through the remaining portions of how that's all factored in. Other revenues, you can kind of see an asterisk to the side on other revenues. That number dropped dramatically from $4,128,000 down to $264,000. The main reason behind that is the ARPA grant that was received in 2021 and 2022 was a little over $3 million. That was reduced out, so there's no other revenue that's coming in from ARPA. We don't have an ARPA grant that's coming in this year. So we did take that out, and that's also the removal of the E911 from the general fund to make it its own separate fund. So that's why you see those two lines match up a little bit different. We've held consistent with not using any fund balance for last year's budget or this year's budget. So we've been able to hold consistent for the last 2 years with that as well. The overall framework of the general fund budget goes down from $33,708,000 in 2022 down to $32,856,000 in 2023. That factors in the two things I was just telling you about, so you can take that into account as well. When you took that ARPA grant that was factored in as revenue in 2022 is no longer there. The 911 fund has been moved to its own separate fund. So there was a slight increase, but when you look at the numbers stacked up next to each other, it appears as a decrease. So showing you kind of on a pie chart where those funds come from, you can see that real property taxes account for 40% of our overall budget. Services come in at 12.6, intergovernmental comes in at 4.29, and that gives you just a full breakdown of showing where the funds come from that we are operating off of. Next line here shows the expenditures, the proposed expenditure line items. You can see on line 1 under general government, it went from that 8.2 million down to 6.9. That is including the budgeted ARPA. Trying to read the writing here. When it turns to the side, I have to turn my head to go with it. But unspent ARPA funds. So what within that category, you're seeing that there were budgeted ARPA funds that were carried over from 2022 into 2023 that have not been spent yet. According to the terms of that grant, we have until 2024 for those to all be expended. There won't be more revenue coming in, but the money that's in the bank for the projects is there, and then we're not rushing to try to spend it as fast as we can. We're trying to make sure we're cautiously incorporating those. Public safety, the big change for public safety, two big changes. One is the removal of 911, or that includes the 911, but it's been moved from one fund to its own separate fund. The reason for the increase, though, in public safety is the commitment to the salary market adjustments of $3.50 an hour within public safety. So that did come at a pretty good price tag. The rest of the items there have held pretty close to the same. You can see there's very little difference from one year to the next, and most of that's equated to salary adjustments as they went in. As we mentioned before, there was a 5% COLA that was a part of that. That's what that looks like in the pie chart form. You can see public safety is 46.77% of our overall budget, so close to 50 is going to the public safety categories. 12.18 goes to public works. 21% to general government, 12% to judicial, and then you have the other smaller pieces of the pie that are on there as well. Capital Projects Fund, just kind of showing a breakdown of how the referendum was passed for SPLOST. This has been in place since 2020. This is the SPLOST that's in place. The projected SPLOST revenue over the entire lifespan of the SPLOST tax is $37 million. The county expenditure items that were broken down, you have road projects and facilities, parks and recreation projects, enterprise fund debt, public safety, fire and EMS, public safety sheriff, and water and sewer facilities. So that gives you the breakdown of over the course of the 6-year window, the projected amounts that those would be. That can fluctuate depending on sales, so we go with that. The city's SPLOST allotment, their portion of that SPLOST tax is projected to be at $6.7 million. So that just kind of shows that full fund balance. Those numbers are distributed as they come along each time. County personnel, at the moment, we are showing 291 full-time employees. We have 73 part-time employees. We have 132 seasonal and temporary employees. The reason this number is so much more on seasonal and temporary employees for this year is we had to change the way that poll workers during elections were categorized. They were not listed as employees during prior years. Based on guidance from the Secretary of State's office, they needed to be categorized as seasonal or temporary employees. So instead of just having 1099s, we had to go through and add them all into our system to be temporary employees. And that changed that number and made it much higher. Prior to that, it was Parks and Recreation for referees and lifeguards and different things throughout the Parks and Recreation. So that did shift that number upward, but it's because of incorporating all of those employees in there as well. So closing out fiscal year 2022, a couple big notes. One that I know our staff has worked really hard this year to incorporate. There was no utilization of a tax anticipation note this year, meaning there was no TAM loan for 2022. No funds were borrowed to operate, and I attribute that to a tremendous amount of work from Charlene and her staff in the finance department, to Bill and the administration, but to all department heads to work to ensure that we could manage the funds throughout the year. I don't know historically how long it's been since that's been able to be said. I know last year we were able to reduce it significantly. This year we were able to go and operate for a full year without any tax anticipation loan at all. We're ahead on most revenue categories, showing that we were very conservative in our revenue projections throughout 2022, which will help us again with our fund balance. We try to make that as close as we can, but we would always prefer to budget over on expenses and under on revenue to make sure that we come in great shape. But I think that they did a fantastic job with the staff to make projections, and we were able to generate a little bit more on the revenue side. Most departments are operating at or under budget regarding expenditures. There are a few exceptions, some on the public safety side due to manpower issues and overtime issues of trying to keep things afloat that were up, but the vast majority of all departments have managed under budget throughout the year and have done a tremendous job at doing that. As a result of this, we were able to, and if those of you who haven't seen your E-Retrieve stub, and you get your check tomorrow, but the $500 bonus for full-time employees coming out for a Christmas bonus, and $250 bonus for part-time employees. So we were able to ensure that we're continuing to take care of our staff, and that will be a part of your check tomorrow. So, surprise. We have received sealed bids for a new administrative software to replace 3 antiquated systems. Currently, we have 3 different systems that manage our finances and require duplicate entry from a number of staff members over and over and over again. And so we've received bids from 3 different companies that are sealed still, that we're going to open to try to get that process moving forward, to get that up to date and make it to where the accounting software is much more efficient. Fund balance is carried into 2022 of $10,072,819. That's net of a $4.3 million reduction for prior year accounting irregularities. So closing out 2022, we're projected to be in good shape. That comes out at 38% of fiscal year 21 operating budget. So thanks to some fantastic work. A lot of that money is spoken for. We do have through 2024 to spend it, but it is in our fund balance to carry forward, and we're able to operate using a tremendous amount of that. Moving forward, objectives and issues that we're facing. I mean, one, we're going to continue to fight for a low tax level, but we have to balance that with a high service level and trying to constantly weigh being able to provide the best services at the lowest taxes. Some of our challenges, inflation, obviously, we're all dealing with it, but it's affecting not only you at home, but it's affecting us when they're trying to buy asphalt and they're trying to buy water pipe, and we're trying to buy anything. We're trying to put fuel in the vehicles needed to go and take that asphalt to the area. It is affecting looming recession. I think that anybody that's watched the news has seen that we know there are things coming. We don't know at what pace, and we don't know at exactly what time. So the other challenge is the transition between those two different environments and being able to time the decisions that we make correctly as the market shifts into that, and trying to really pay close attention to the counties in the metro area as that trickles north, so that we're aware of what we're facing as it's coming. We're still currently in the middle of a loss dispute, and this is something that has to be put on the table every 10 years, where you go back and forth on determining the allocations from lost, and it's a dispute where the county, Nelson and Talking Rock are working versus the city of Jasper right now on trying to work through that. We're currently still in a mediation phase and trying to get through that. Replenishing the general fund balance from the $4.3 million adjustment is another challenge that we're continuing to face. I think we've got good things in place that, as I described earlier, that give us the opportunity to get there as quick as we can. But that is definitely an issue that we have to keep in the back of our minds, that we're working constantly to replenish that. And I think that this budget gives us an opportunity to do just that. So with that, I know that's just a quick overview picture. As far as for the actual presentation, I saw media people trying to take pictures with your phones of the screen. I probably can make it a little easier and hand you a copy of what was on the screen, and you'll be much, much happier. With that, the physical copy of the full budget, the line item budget, like I said, will be available upon the conclusion of the meeting. It probably already is. Yeah, it already is, sitting in the county clerk's office, so that way anybody that needs to come in and see it, Lisa's fun to come in and hang out with, and you can read it while you're hanging out with her. And we appreciate that very much. And I want to thank our staff. I know for any of you that have came by here and seen vehicles in the parking lot over the last few weekends, Charlene and Bill have been in here working and trying to study. All the department heads and elected officials that submitted everything that was there. We were able to fund the submission requests and be able to work through that in almost every sense. There were a couple of areas where we had to work back and forth to try to make some adjustments, but very few areas that had to be adjusted. And when those did have to be adjusted, it was met with the great cooperation. I think everybody was wanting to work together to try to produce the greatest budget and help us be good stewards of what we're here to be good stewards of. So I will open it up. If anybody has a question, I'm more than happy to take questions. Makes you nervous when the tax commissioner's office starts talking amongst themselves right when you say question. All right, well, with no questions, we will adjourn the public hearing for the budget. We still have our 5:30 regular meeting that we'll have coming up, and we'll be happy to work with you then. So if you're able to stick around,
entertain a comment?
Oh, comments. Yeah, questions or comments, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Comments.
On behalf of our staff, thank the Board of Commissioners for your plan going forward. It's much needed for our retention. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. All right, so now that I've asked for questions, I'll ask for comments, just because I didn't realize I already done it. Sorry. All right, well, we will adjourn the call meeting at 4:55, and like I said, we will have our meeting at 5:30. Look forward to seeing you. Thank you.